Hi, welcome back. This is our very final Make It Your Own video on Pawsby. And as you can see from Eleanor's backdrop, we're looking at lesson 11 and lesson 12 of Pawsby, which are the last two lessons in that curricula. And just wanted to offer a really warm welcome to my colleague, Eleanor Brown. She's Head of Operations at the Mindfulness in Schools project. But prior to this role, she was working as a wellbeing lead in a primary school. So hi Eleanor, and thank you very much for doing this video with me.
Hi, Sarah, it's lovely to be here.
And I just wondered, Eleanor, if it'd be all right with you to just share a little bit about what the role was that you had at the primary school and that evolved over the time that you were there.
Okay, thank you. So I feel so grateful for the opportunity that I had to do the role as wellbeing lead. There had been someone in before me and they had built up some really wonderful things. And I was brought in to continue that work and very specifically to have a universal wellbeing offer that could be rolled right across the school. So it had this amazing element to it where I was in every class across the school every year delivering programs to support wellbeing. And I had a great team of wellbeing TAs and I had the most incredible support from our senior leadership team. In our trainings, we talk about the different circumstances that we may find ourselves in. Previously, I'd been peripatetic, going in and out of primary schools, and that's a very different feel to being embedded in the school. And even when you're embedded in the school, you may get a mixture of support, and I could not have had more amazing support. So I was really incredibly lucky.
That's really encouraging to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, and I had gone into this school many years before as a peripatetic, so it also felt really incredible. And again, in trainings, we often talk about planting seeds. Of course, we want to go into our schools and offer our programs and get it all embedded in the school as soon as possible. And it can take time, and that's okay. So that was a very positive learning I had, that these things happen in their own time.
And I know that you've trained, you're a trainer for all of our curricula, but you're trained in DOTS, in Pawsby, in the present, and you were rolling that out in that school. How did that end up looking? What was that like?
So, as I say, I made sure that I got into every class every year. And so in early years, Key Stage 1, I was delivering DOTS, and I liked being there with the children across transition. So I would often start the course at a point in the year, which meant that I would go up with them after the summer term for September. I started off with DOTS, and then I would go in a bit later in Key Stage 2 and do Pawsby. In year 6, I would do dot breathe or a Pawsby dot breathe combination refresher. I would also drop in at different times to all the year groups to do refreshers. And I can talk a bit more about how I supported Pawsby after the course in Key Stage 2. I can talk about that later. I also started weaving in the present between these courses because it lends itself so beautifully to building on the curricula and weaving it into classroom life.
Yeah, lovely. Did you have the experience of children who'd had the experience of DOTS and then what it was like when you introduced Pawsby to them in terms of having some foundations?
Yes, I did. And actually, I was going to mention that later on with one of the practices that we do in these lessons we're going to be talking about. But yeah, I did. I was really fortunate to have that. And in my experience, you're doing it fresh wherever point you meet the children. There's something that's always fresh, and there's something different about every cohort, every individual as they go on the journey and receive it and learn from it. And at the same time, it was really lovely to have that point of reference. I know Nikki was talking about it in her session because she's had a similar experience, that you have points of familiarity, the concepts are quite familiar, and things that you can refer back to.
Yeah, really lovely to hear about that. So I wonder if we can turn our focus now to looking specifically at these two lessons, which just even reading the titles, Growing Happiness and the Yum Factor, kind of made me go, nice. because I know how much enjoyment I've had teaching these in schools. So just curious to know though, in the spirit of make it your own, which is staying true to the intentions of the programme and at the same time making tweaks or adaptations for the young people you've got in front of you, what changes have you made?
So I would say similarly, I just get a big smile on my face looking at these, just the titles, even though I've seen the videos and the photos so many times. I trained to teach Paws in 2014, but I still get joy out of it every time I teach it. I tend to keep quite closely to the slides, to the delivery. The tweaks that I make are more nuances. So we talked in this series and in the .B MiYO series about trauma sensitivity, this awareness that we get to know our cohort as well as we can. You know, I will check in with teachers before classes just in case anything's changed. And when I was wellbeing lead, I had quite a good knowledge of what was going on. And even so, things can change day to day. So that was something I very much have in mind across teaching the whole course, but possibly a bit surprisingly, particularly for these lessons as well, because we can go into it, like you and I have just said, feeling, oh, isn't it all lovely? And actually, it might not be on that day. And I'll talk about it more specifically as we go through the different activities that we do, just about being sensitive to, okay, so how can I offer this in a way that even if someone's having a bad day and I don't know about it, that will be something that they can receive within their window of tolerance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have made similar sort of tweaks to this with that kind of lens of recognizing that accessing this might not be so easy for children that have also had limited options for doing enjoyable activities, things that make them feel happy, the sorts of things we might just make an assumption about, just really being careful not to do that in these sessions. Yeah. So is it all right to go into lesson 11 first?
Yeah, and some specific examples. Okay, so with lesson 11, we start with my mind feels and my body feels, which in training that we model as we would in school, invite the children, because they'll recognize this practice by now, to explore how their mind is feeling, how their body's feeling, but really knowing that if they've got a post-it note, they could just scribble a shape that suggests it, that it's just for them. Or they could make up a word that makes sense to them, or it might just be kind of an expression, or so, leaving that very open and accessible. And also not asking them specifically how their mind or body feels, but maybe your mind and body feels the same in this moment, or maybe it feels differently. And then we revisit it later and see if there's been a change. When we come to the hot cross bun, there can be a suggestion around exploring worry in the context of this. And I wouldn't necessarily do that. Something that I've seen you do is more about just noticing, have any thoughts that you've noticed, and moving through the hot cross bun and seeing anything that's really stood out for them, that can then therefore be open to anything. And again, reminding them about just sharing what feels safe and comfortable to share, and that you don't have to describe the context or the background. It's very much just the thoughts were like this, the body sensations were like this.
Yeah, I agree. I really think it's important that we don't zoom in too much there to just negative experience and keep it nice and open, even though, because what we're doing in this lesson, of course, as well as you know, is we're transitioning from having explored all of that in previous lessons to then moving into where we place our attention a little bit more in terms of focus. So yeah, keeping it nice and open, I think, allows for children to choose something that isn't perhaps as challenging as might have been happening for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thread that then continues. And again, managing our expectations about how these are such lovely lessons. We show various videos across these two lessons. There could easily be an assumption that everyone's going to find them hilarious. And that's not necessarily the case, and that's okay. And so again, it's having that in mind and using your own practice, using my own practice. I am here to hold and welcome all of it. It's that capacity to really honour their experience. And actually, I'm really grateful when a child is honest about their experience and doesn't feel that they've got to go along with it and say, oh, this was really funny. When a child is able to express what's true for them, for me, that's so key to what we are building in this course.
Absolutely. And I think that then sort of moves away from this idea of blue sky thinking, always needing to have a positive outcome from something, in terms of just letting what's there be there. And really, like you just said, really important that we're modelling that as well as teachers, that we're not trying to look like we're trying to steer them towards how do we process that and come out the other end, and all of that stuff, that we're like, yeah, well, that's what's here right now. Thank you for naming that, because I just think that's so important.
Yeah, thank you, Faye. It does feel really important. So the next bit is exploring a special time together. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier about this real importance of making it as accessible as possible for the children that you're working with. And so the picture has got fireworks in the background and it looks like a big event. And so to just say, a special time doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be a crowd of people with fireworks. In fact, my cat would really hate that, because my cat is introduced throughout the training. And there's something also that threads through these sessions, which is that happiness can come from inside us and outside us. So there are those two pieces there. And so in terms of the special event not having to be a massive thing, I might say it could be noticing spring flowers or new green leaves on trees, just because what's here now is the spring. I will also keep to quite a lot of school-based examples. So it might be there's been a special assembly or a topic day or a school trip or a visitor coming in. We always talk about knowing the children in front of you, but even if you're going into a school, you might have got to know the children quite well, I hope, after 12 weeks. So you might know that some of them are really into gaming or some of them are really into sports. So you could name generally things like maybe you've got up to the next level in the game that you're playing, things like that potentially people will relate to. Or maybe your match went really well, things like that. And then I will also say there's no need to share this. This is just for you to think about for yourself. And then we'll do the hot cross bun together. And then again, something that's really important that again threads through the whole of this course is, I remember a time when I thought emotions were one thing. So you were either happy or you were not. But even bringing up a memory of a special time or a special moment, you can be quite moved. There might be some nostalgia there, or there can be a mix of happiness and sadness. It's not all just one thing. So I think that is really important to acknowledge. It might come up naturally, but also to name and acknowledge. And again, because this isn't about being like, oh, these 2 sessions are all going to be happy. It's about, let's explore this and see what comes and hold it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of think the nuance is really important, isn't it? Is to just recognise that alongside joy, sometimes sorrow is there, and that's really natural and normal too. And it's kind of tuning in and noticing those things, which can come out of some of the things that children share in these sessions if they feel comfortable sharing. In terms of, and when we talk about wellbeing education, that's such an important part of that for me, is just this kind of, not this basic sort of happy, sad, almost polarized pieces around emotion and what we experience, but just a real fine tuning to actually there's a little bit of all of these different things there. And when we have students noticing that at the end of the course, I always see it as being a real little mini win for them, also allowing themselves to feel that range in that moment and not necessarily thinking, oh, I've always got to be positive, which is what we're not about with mindfulness, which is really important to differentiate that from other things that might be more polarizing, I suppose, or maybe more simplified in the way that they're offered. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for naming that again. Just really, everything you say rings bells for me, because I recognise it from my own teaching as well.
And what you were just saying is really making me think that what we are offering throughout the course is an opportunity for the children to share safely and what's comfortable for them, what is true for them in their experience. And then for us to hold that and mirror it back and validate that experience. And that's something that, just in my own experience, I have found really helpful in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we start off, don't we, with talking about there is no right or wrong at the beginning when we first start teaching this to children. And for me, that's what comes with that. And like you say, just really, oh, it's okay to feel how I feel. It's okay to have the experiences I have, they're valid. It's just really liberating. And I really wish I'd had some of that when I was young. It would have been really affirming to have an adult hold that space for you to really just be how you are without you then feeling there was something wrong with what was going on. I always remember, and this is slightly personal, but I don't mind sharing it, is that I was always told I was too sensitive as a child.
Me too.
Because I was a bit emotional, I would cry easily, but also when I got angry quickly. So all my emotions were very expressed quickly and easily. And I kind of did feel there was something wrong with me. And I'm not blaming anyone for that because I just think that was a different time and we are better at acknowledging and allowing all of this stuff to be there now. But also, obviously, as mindfulness teachers, we have the tools and the skills to support children with allowing all of that to be there. But yeah, it would have been amazing to have felt okay with being like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in addition to that, what we've been offering throughout the course is also skills and ways to take care of ourselves and take care of ourselves when we are in any different emotional state. There's that piece as well, which again, I would have absolutely loved, also having been a very sensitive child. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
So,
okay.
is it okay to move into lesson 12?
Yes, absolutely. So lesson 12, noticing the good stuff. So you can see in the picture, the puppy and our little character are going like, woo. So this is where I will go back and I'll remind them about the puller pose that we will have done in previous lessons and just invite them, can you show me what you feel like? As well as discussing how do we know how they're feeling. I think it's really great as far as possible to bring physical motion and activity into the classes, and particularly these last two where there isn't a lot of practice.
Mm.
The next part, when we look at the brain and we revisit the four part, because this is our last lesson, so we're doing a recap as well as continuing to explore noticing the lovely. And we look at the brain parts and how they might be involved in supporting us to notice the good stuff, in supporting us to be content, happy. And something that I've found really helpful, having done compassionate mind training for educators and children, is the way I talk about the amygdala. So I will have done this earlier on when we first introduced the amygdala, and associating it with fight, flight, and fun, as
Mm.
well as freeze and the other things, because the amygdala is involved in activating our sympathetic nervous system. And that activation can be to do with something that we're excited about or getting us ready for a school play or a party or an assembly or even just going out to play. It's both activating our threat system, but it is also involved in getting us ready to get out there and have fun. And in the past, we will have talked about this idea of being nerve sighted. Sometimes being excited or a bit nervous can feel very similar.
Mm.
And so I would name that the amygdala can be involved, us being ready to be out there and have fun, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're always having new learning, aren't we, that comes through about the neuroscience. And really great to, again, show that kind of nuance rather than it just being, it keeps you safe. And
Yeah.
that just being it, the fact that it's got this element to it that is actually connected with things that bring us joy and are pleasant experiences as well is really important to share.
Absolutely. So that's one of the tweaks. Again, just acknowledging that as we go through, there are photos here that some children might think are really funny and cute, and others might just go, ew. And so making space for all of that. Again, inviting people to share what's yummy for them. So we look at what's yummy and this idea of the yum factor, what gives you joy. And again, talking about growing happiness, how it can come from inside or outside us. So we can refer back, again, keeping it safe and contained. A yum thing could be remembering a special time like we did last week. So I know we would have all done that if we were in class together. I'll also give examples that are a mixture of alone time, but also together time, but together in quite a broad sense again, just thinking about the together time could be in school, it could be outside school, but we don't know. Children could be having a tricky time in school or a tricky time at school, and we might know or we might not. So I'll give examples of things that I love that they will have already heard me talking about, like reading, gardening, yoga, cooking. So they'll be like, oh yeah, we know that's what Miss says when she comes in. But also I might say, or it might be time with others. So again, giving that opportunity for it to be an activity with other people, but being quite general about it. Again, I'll probably bring in my very fluffy cat, who they will have heard about. So I try and give those kind of examples, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think because what you're doing is just giving little doorways into, aren't you, through all of these offerings of examples of what you might enjoy. So that even if you've not had the experience of something yourself personally, there's hopefully something there within that range that will be a little, oh yeah, no, I recognize, my pet, or time with my pet, or, whatever it might be that helps them move into this. Just to share, by the way, that I know that in some schools where, for example, there may be a higher proportion of children who have had challenging backgrounds or circumstances, maybe schools where they've got higher levels of children who have come from refugee backgrounds, etc. They have sometimes done a little bit of scaffolding work pre-learning prior to this session, or some of the other sessions as well that relate to choosing joyful things to do, where there is a bit more in-depth exploration prior to the offering, so that it's easier for them to access this. And I think that's a great idea as well.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, particularly if you're lucky enough to be the classroom teacher and you've got that additional time as well, I think that's really great. That definitely things you can do then. I mean, you can thread all of this through your weeks together. And obviously the other thing is that, I might also name yum factors in school
Mm,
as well. So again, things that that they've done that have been within school, you could, as we did with the special time in the previous week. Okay, so the last bit where we offer gratitude practice, and there are two options. I do really love when you put them with their partner for the lesson, and obviously knowing who's with who, making sure everyone's comfortable to give each other a gift. I will scaffold this and offer and invite options. It might just be, I hope you have a really nice weekend.
mm,
Or having just been talking about yum moments, it could be, I hope you have lots of yum moments.
mm,
So again, it's contained in that way, but also potentially you could say thank you to someone. Maybe if someone's been a helpful learning partner, and if we've done dots before,
mm,
because there's the lovely lesson in dots where we write a thank you card, and I take in heart-shaped cards, and they can choose who they write it to. So that kind of gratitude can be experienced, not always, but can be experienced as a positive thing, both
mm.
giving and receiving. And that would be more if it was a dots cohort coming through because they have had that experience built up in the past. And again, this could be a lovely experience or it could be awkward, and that's all okay. Because even as an adult, it can feel a bit awkward.
Yeah,
Um,
it's just not part of our culture, is it? And obviously, there are other countries around the world where it is a little bit more familiar to be openly positive with each other. But in some cultures, and definitely here in the UK, it's not always the way that we would name positive things that we'd wish for people. It's just an interesting thing to notice how that sits with them. And just even naming that is helpful, I think, to just go, oh, yeah, this doesn't always feel great, does it? Even though it's a lovely thing to say to somebody or to receive.
yeah, absolutely. And again, I think something that's so lovely about Thorsby and the way of teaching this is that we will be inviting children if they share something, or if I say, oh, maybe it felt really lovely, or maybe awkward, to, if they're comfortable, put up their hands. And then they can look around the room and they can go, oh, I'm not alone in this experience. I think that is really important throughout the whole training and in these lessons as well.
Yeah. So in adult mindfulness, we refer to it as kind of commonality of experience, but just that ability to see you're not on your own with what you're experiencing. There is usually at least one other person who might have had that experience with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a class of 30, there are likely to be more as well. Yes, it's the commonality of experience, it's the normalizing of experience. And there is obviously an option for an alternative practice, which is a reflective practice about bringing something to mind that you feel grateful for. And that's an option. So it's always about who's in front of me, not just who's been in front of me in this class, but right now, today, how are things? And so that's always an option to do the more general reflective practice. And I might link it to the yum factor, because again, then that helps in terms of what you were saying about scaffolding. We've already done a bit of exploration, possibly pre-exploration about that. And so that could be something that it's relatively easy to bring into a practice about bringing to mind something that you feel grateful for.
Yeah, lovely. Sounds great. And absolutely, spot on in terms of making it accessible and inclusive for everybody. So yeah, thank you. Is it okay then because I know that in your role you would then look to how could you continue to support the children with developing their practice? What kind of things did you offer following the course?
We had a Pawsby lunch club that was just completely open-ended, and there was an invitation if anyone wanted to help be there and do posters, but it was absolutely come if you'd like to, I'll be there, and there's no need to just see how you feel on the day. So that was one of the things to ongoing support. I'd also go back into classrooms and invite them to remember, share with me, perhaps do a practice a bit like in DOTS, where there's that lovely celebration session, revisiting different things in the curriculum, and posters for a display board. There might be invitations to do that as well. And then with the older children, if I taught them DOTS, I'd be going back to do Pause B, we're doing a bit of the present. And then in year 6, we might do Dot Breathe. I would probably do it in September. But then I'll go in the couple of weeks before SATs and do a bit more recapping. I would also weave it in with other wellbeing practices and activities.
Sounds really amazing what happened at the school, and I'm sure they miss you for all that you offered in this context and for this work that you did there, which just sounds brilliant. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, because it's just been so helpful to hear in that particular role that you had there, but also some of the, obviously, the ideas that you shared there around kind of making it accessible and inclusive can be applied by anyone, whether they're teaching it as a classroom teacher, peripatetically, or as a wellbeing lead in a school. So that's great to hear. And just want to say thank you very much to everyone who has been watching the video series. I hope you found it helpful. Just to share again that we have this Just One Change where you can share differences, adaptations, changes that you've made to the curricula. So if you've got an idea, you want to share it with us, we really love to put it up on our website. And so email your idea to research@mindfulnessinschools.org and we will take a look at it and we'll get it up there as soon as we can. So yeah, thank you so much, Eleanor, for joining me for this video.
Thank you.